Good evening, everybody. So a big selling point about the MidNite All-in-One inverter is the fact that it's supposed to be field serviceable. So this is actually kind of big for DIY or installers, because if you stop and think about it, these things are big. These things are heavy. Having to take it off the wall, put another one on the wall, take it off the wall, put another one on the wall, that's a lot of wasted time. Plus the shipping, plus the waiting, whereas you get a circuit board, pull a few screws, pull a few wires, swap it out, and then you're done. So I kind of wanted to take a look at a full teardown on this thing and see, is it really something that could be called field serviceable? So I got my hands on a second one. This is actually one of their engineering models, but for the purposes of this test, it shouldn't really matter. There's going to be, slight similarities in, like circuit breaker color, maybe a little board is different, but all in all, the concepts and everything are going to be exactly the same. Before we dive into this, one other thing just to keep into the back of your mind is not only is this field serviceable concept great from a repair standpoint, whether you're a DIYer or installer, because it can significantly save you downtime, but also from the standpoint of having backup components. Because for most things, if you want a backup component, you have to buy 2 or 3. You have to buy one more of however many you're using and save that as a backup. If you're into prepping, you could take these different circuit board components, put them in a Faraday bag, and set them aside in the event that something does happen. Now you have these pristine components where you're not having to have an entire monster stored someplace in a giant Faraday cage. You have a bag with some components. A whole lot simpler, a whole lot cheaper than a full replacement. So let's tear this thing open and see if it really is field serviceable. Alright, we'll start in the lower wiring compartment. We'll do the easy thing first. We'll just pull off all these breakers. Pop all those up. Got connectors right here. We'll just slide those off. Now we'll try and just remove this whole plate here to get access to what's behind it. So we'll just have to take off this neutral connection. So we've got 2 screws on the side, 2 on the left, 3 on the right. There is 1 screw back here that has to come off as well. Couple of bus bars on the bottom, and then access to this whole section down here. So let's work on this circuit board right here. So we've got bar 1, bar 2, bar 3, bar 4, bar 5, and bar 6. And then each stud is labeled behind with what each connection is. And we'll disconnect this ribbon cable on that board right here. This says AFCI. And pull all these out. There we go. Oh, that's kind of cool. So on this board, CT3, CT2, and CT1 for PVs. So built-in CTs. So that's how they find the current. That's kind of cool. Didn't know that. All right, moving over to the comms board here. So from the bottom, right here, we've got remote shutdown wires, red on the left, black on the right. These are push pin style, so we'll just pull those out. Disconnect that one. And then let's pull this connector off. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws to come off. And there's our communication board. All right. Let's go to this relay board here. This has a lot of cables in here. These cables here are zip tied to a stud in the back. So we'll snip that one zip tie. That just helps it get it out of the way. Relay CN5 is this big ribbon cable. Pop that off. Is that a majority of our cables? It looks like it. So down here on the bottom, right here, this white connector. So I'm going to leave that connected there, and I'm going to leave these connected to the top of this board as well. So let's see here, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, probably 6 screws to pull the board out. Oh, I missed the cable connector. Relay CN2. Here's our relay board. And it's kind of nice that even the wires, so they start with the specific board they're going on, and then you have the connector, basically the terminal or the port. We can pull this board off right here. So this screw right here actually looks like it goes to the battery positive, and this screw goes to the battery negative, and then these ones actually hold the board in place. Let's pop these 5 screws off. And so those studs go back to the bus bars for the batteries. So pop that board off. So let's pop out this transmitter. So we'll just leave that for right now. So this is actually the core right here. So I'm going to snip this zip tie, and then all these positive lines are fed through the core. Oh, but then everything's wrapped over these wires here. So yeah, I'll have to look at disconnecting these higher up so that I'm not having to snip all these zip ties and pull them off these cores. I don't really need to do that. I will have to disconnect from the switch up here before I can pull this bundle out. So we'll just cut that and pull that back out. Yeah, we'll pull this metal cover off of the breaker. So we got 3 screws here and 3 up here. And then there's 2 screws back here. Pop the cover off, expose our breaker. So the breaker is bolted in to the positive side. So we'll have to actually get up in here first before we can actually look at taking this off. We'll have to disconnect this bolt, this nut here for this bus bar, and then wherever the bus bar connects up here on an upper board. So we need to pop off this so that we can disconnect the PV lines underneath. So there's a screw in the PV switch. Pop that screw off. So I think I have to pop this clip off. Guessing this clip is the thing that's holding the... There we go, yep. Push down from the top. So yeah, this is a clip that helps hold this all in. Oh, and then there's a giant nut on the outside. Now let's see here. Let's just pull these PV connections off of this board up top. So this toroid won't fit between the breaker and the fan, so I'm going to pull the 2 screws on the fan. Just let the fan hang right now. There we go. PV disconnect, got a toroid, and then we have our transmitter with our core. Alright, so we'll pull this off here. This says C10, INF C10. And it even says right there, 2 relay. So all these along the bottom are our fan lines. One line comes down to this fan, and then the other ones go to the fans in the back. And let's pull these just to get this bundle out of the way. Oh, I have this whole bundle of wires that I can pull out. And then this bundle here is zip tied to this last piece here. INF CN25, and then that says CN25. And we got this out. Alright, so this cable here is on the same board. This line right here, let's snip this zip tie. Right here, let's pull this connector from left to right. And then our big ribbon cable. This is L-B, bus neutral, L-A. Alright, so it looks like this circuit board is mounted to a metal plate, and we can pull that metal plate off with 6 screws on the outside. Oh, looks like this is all screwed. The board is screwed down, and then there's other screws underneath the plate. So this whole board has to come off before the plate can come off. And here's that board. Significantly heavy. I'll have to peel up the cover here to remove 3 more screws on this plate. And the whole plate can come right off. So now we just see what's left before we can pop this last board off. Now let's see if we can pull out these bus bars and then this connection here so that the breaker and then this whole thing can come off. There's your bus bars. 300 amp breaker. PVL1, PVL1. Let's just start popping those ones off too. Hey. Psst. Up here, Bal bus N. BBL negative. BBL positive. L negative, A negative. L negative, B negative. Bus 3P CN6. Right there. Down here we've got NTCB. Alright, this last board I believe is the FET board. So all of these spots here are screwed to the back plate with through FETs. So I gotta be very careful pulling this off. And long reached temperature sensor. So you can see all the different components that we've got here on the bench. And in reality, there's not a whole lot. I mean, you've got, what, half a dozen circuit boards, and then a pile of wires that connect those boards together. So if any one of these boards failed for whatever reason, you could get a replacement for just that component, swap it out, and be back up and running in really a couple hours. There's a handful of smaller differences with some of these boards, like I know the communication board has different terminals, and the circuit breakers, the 100 amp circuit breakers are white instead of orange. You know, lots of little things like that. I think they might have changed the sticker. But this large board right here, this bank of electrolytic capacitors was changed to solid state capacitors. One other thing about this board, this is the one that has the FETs on the back of it. And I'll throw up a picture here of the FETs so that you can see what I'm talking about. But those have to be lined up exactly in the right spot. And so they actually added little alignment pins there. And there's another one somewhere up here. I don't remember where that one is. So let's go look on the case. So we've got one alignment pin right there and one alignment pin right there. So this means that every time that you put that back on, you're going to get it in the exact right spot with all these holes, because there's a lot of them, all these holes lined up. So they actually did a very good job of going through and labeling all the different terminals and cables. A lot of these common cables have labels on the end. So the first section, the first part is like a specific board that it's on, and then the second part is the terminal on that board. So INF CN25. And so if we look at this board right here, right in the middle of the screen, CN25. And then if we came up here and looked at these terminals, we've got bar 1 through bar 6 on the PV connection board. And right here we've got bar 1 through bar 6 cables. So all of these are really labeled really well so that you can easily pull them out and have them go right back in the exact same spot. And so really all you're going to end up needing for reassembly is probably a couple of zip ties from ones that you had to snip, and then some silicone to make sure your little pin connectors don't come undone, especially if you know that you're going to be in a vibration-prone environment. I think it probably took me longer to move the camera around and film everything than it did to try and actually disassemble this entire inverter. Now we got to put it all back together and not have any extra pieces. Well, we got it all back together. And actually, I had so much fun tearing it apart, I actually did it again. Well, let's just say it helps when you're putting things back together to make sure you get all the connections right so that you don't have an extra connection floating around, which happens to be the switch to turn the inverter on. So I did have to go through, pop the breakers off again, pop the metal faceplate off, and connect the power button on the side. We're to that final point to where we really test and see, did I get it all put back together correctly? Probably the most stressful part of the entire thing. Not taking the thing apart, but trying to power it up after that rebuild. So I did go through and add our battery connections on here, but the breaker is turned off. I guess we'll find out together what happens. Cross your fingers, folks. In 3, 2, 1. I swear, for a second, when it wasn't doing anything, I was like, what did I do? It's powering on. We're getting some flashing lights on top, some alarms. I don't actually know if this was programmed ahead of time, so it could be throwing an alarm because it's missing battery communication or something like that. So yeah, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping I didn't forget to plug something in. Or so A1 is grid under voltage, which, hey, I can live with a grid under voltage alarm. If that's all we're having issues with. It took some time. I mean, part of it's, trying to get the camera angles and everything so that you can, A, remember how everything goes back together, and B, get a good shot. But it still took several hours to get it taken apart and a couple hours more to get it put back together. But it all went together very smoothly. As long as you can, separate your screws from the areas that you're working on, that's really going to be the big thing, because it's got a lot of screws that you got to take out. But the wires all have those dual labels on them. So they tell you the board that it connects to and then the port that you're plugging that connector into. And then it took me a little while because I didn't have a tube of that silicone to reconnect all of those connectors back in and then make sure that they don't come out. But, I mean, several hours versus, what? A week, 2, 3 weeks of downtime? And it also makes me wonder if that serviceability aspect could also be used down the road for upgrades, maybe. Say they come out with a better display. Can we just pop the old one off and pop the new one in? I have talked to MidNite Solar as well as Current Connected, and both are going to be having a stockpile of these different parts. I'll tell you right now, I don't know how the pricing and all that kind of stuff is going to go with some of this stuff, or if it's just going to be saved for warranty purposes. I'm not sure. But if you're interested in something that could be a completely field serviceable unit by you, I'll leave links in the description below. Take a look at the MidNite All-in-One. Well, I hope the teardown's been fun. With that, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later.